Is more always the best? Hello, friends. My name is Goran Velim, and welcome to my first podcast. I created my channel mostly so I help people out with growing and evolving. And today I have Gina Spagnoli, all the way from the United States of America. She's a published author for professional development and an educational director for an up-and-coming educational company. Hello, Gina, and welcome to my first podcast.
Thank you, Goran, for inviting me. I truly appreciate it. I just think that we also left out that I'm also a New York State educator, and that's what I've been doing for about 15 years. So, as some of you may or may not follow me on Twitter or LinkedIn or any of those social media, one of the things that I do work a lot with is social emotional learning. And I know that you had a podcast and that the objective of your podcast was kind of taking people's needs and helping them fulfill their social, emotional, and spiritual needs. And from that, I was glad that you and I could kind of team up and talk about these principles that I incorporate in the classroom and see how really, truly they're relevant in real life. So thank you for the invite.
You are most welcome. So, there are 5 principles that apply in this topic. Can you please describe them?
Yeah, in this podcast, we're going to be reviewing Mindset Moves Mountains. We're going to be reviewing what connection over content means. We're going to be revisiting the first question that you asked and see if less is more or more is less. Then we're going to be diving into the joy in the journey. And then we're going to end with reflection and resetting. So very, very applicable to life and education. So I hope your listeners enjoy this.
Yes, I hope so too. So mindset moves mountains. What does that mean?
Well, I think that's pretty self-explanatory, but I think a lot of people, as we're growing in this day and age, people are talking more about mindset. And if you think you can do it. And what it really means to have a very focused and positive mindset. And I think that's what we need to talk about here is you coach gymnastics. I am in the classroom, and I've definitely noticed that I speak to my students very differently. We start approaching challenges, not just as challenges, but as opportunities. We're trying to develop what it means to live in a positive mindset and have positive expectations that if things turn out well, you're going to succeed, but also to give kids courage to keep trying and to persisting.
Yeah. So what I think is that it doesn't matter if you're right or wrong, you're probably right. So in your mindset, if you are right, you are right. And if you think you're wrong, you're probably wrong, right?
Exactly. But also, I think we have to start looking at the mind as a muscle, right? Because your mind, the more that you start exercising, it could get bigger and it could get stronger, especially through mental exercise. So I think it's really important that if you're in real life, like let's just say that you're at a meet, right? Yeah. And how can you focus on mindset for your gymnast?
Well, it depends of the kid, like each individual is a little bit different. So gymnastics is different than classroom, I think, because it's smaller numbers. But what I mostly do for my kids, like I encourage them, I tell them like to visualize what is next, like how hard they worked to get there. And like, I try to show them at least that I'm not nervous and like I have a positive and I know that it's going to be all right. So even if they mess up a little bit, they have to keep on going and show that they can finish this routine. Because I know many gymnasts that have fallen off the beam before and then they got the gold medal at the end of the competition, and that's because they really picked up from where they left off and they just kept on going.
I also think maybe it has to do with how you change their mindset during training, right? I'm pretty sure that you don't ever tell them that I can't, right? You always say that I can is probably not allowed.
Yes, it is not allowed in my class. Yes, that's true.
I can, right? And It's like if people were going on a business meeting, or I'm even going to use you as an example, like when you and I were prepping for our podcast, like you were thinking like you were going to be nervous, and if you think you're going to be nervous, you're going to act like if you're nervous. If you think you can't do something, you can't. So it's really about training your mind to think in a more positive direction. And I think that's
Can I
something
ask
that...
you, how can I train my mind to remember where I put my keys or where did I put my phone sometimes?
I wish, you know, but here's some things that we can give our advice to people who are listening to our podcast. So I guess instead of saying, I'm not good at this, how about they try to say, like, I'm not good at this yet, but I can and I will learn.
That is a good idea, I think.
And here's the classic one that I think you hear, I hear, and anybody else also hears is, I'm afraid I'll make a mistake. And that's okay, but instead of saying, I'm afraid I'm going to make a mistake, how about we train people to say, when I make a mistake, I will learn from it and I'm going to get better.
Yeah. The only way that people get better is by like making mistakes and then learning from them. Even if they're their own mistakes, sometimes people learn from others people's mistakes, you know?
Exactly. And then I'm sure you get this too a lot in the gym is, I'm not as good as my friend.
Yes,
And
but
I think you have to remember.
Yes, I try to tell the kids that everybody is like good in their own way. Like maybe she's better on bars, but you're definitely better on vault, or you're definitely better on floor. So I try to always show them that they are also good at something, you know, and this way they keep on trying their best to get better at everything, having a positive mindset.
And I think before we transition to the next principle, I think the one thing that I want to leave everybody with is, how about if you get some people who are like, oh yeah, like, and they have the mindset with, I don't need to do this. This is good enough. I'm the best I can be. I really want you to challenge your listeners as saying, like, is this truly, truly my best work? And can I improve? Like, I think there's always room for improvement no matter what anybody does.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Good. So we are moving on to the second principle, which is connections over content. Can you expand on that, please?
So this, I think, does stem off of education, because I'm going to go back to Aristotle. And Aristotle once said that education the mind without educating the heart is truly no education at all. And when I do deliver professional development, or if I'm out at a conference, I always say to the audience, like, in order to truly heal the mind or to teach the mind, you must heal the heart. So while we started off with having a positive mindset, and mindset can move mountain, if you think you can, you will. Some people don't have that positive mindset because of something that happened in the past. And that trauma could affect having this positive mindset. So either as a coworker, as a coach, or as a teacher, it's really important to get to know somebody on that intimate level where you can start building a trust. Because in all honesty, connection is the glue that holds the process of achieving anything in a relationship. Like, your connection builds trust. And once you have the fundamental trust in somebody, you can then build upon and get to know them on a deeper level.
Yes. Can you build rapport with like everybody, or is that like certain type of people that you feel like you need to build rapport in order to kind of understand or get them, or something like that?
I think it's possible to build a connection with anybody. I mean, think about it. If you're nervous, and I know your podcast reaches a vast population, it's not just your gymnasts or it's not just your friends, but what about people who walk into like a business meeting, or you have a client who's coming in? You know, one of the first things you don't want to do is just go and sell them your product. Like, you want to get to know who they are as an individual and have that connection. So therefore, like, if you figure out who they are, you can kind of figure out what they need, whether it's in a product, whether it's in the like in your atmosphere, or whether it's in the classroom. So I think this principle transcends a lot of different areas.
But do you believe in this saying that you can build trust over like 10, 15, 20 years, and then you can ruin it in like 5 minutes. Is that true? Like, is there like only one mistake can ruin all the rapport you build with someone, or all the trust that's even in business, in life, in general, with friends? What do you think?
I think that's more of a personal question. I think everybody has their own levels of trust that they feel comfortable in. And if somebody does break that trust, it will take somebody a very long time to regain it.
So let's say like you have 20 kids in the classroom, I'm just saying a random number, and then they build good relationships between them, you have good relationships with your students, and then one of them just like misbehaves, doesn't do their homework, they start lying about, oh, my mom did this or that, and I couldn't come to school because my dad had this and that. Like once you kind of smell it, and once you kind of sense that he's like not at that
Honest?
level of trust, that honest anymore, what do you do? Like you personally,
Personally, I use my connection with them. And I'll say, you know what, I really didn't expect this of you. Like even my kids make mistakes, right? I didn't expect this of you, right? I expect it more from you, and I'm disappointed. So let's figure out where this mishap happened. Like, why did you feel the need to tell me something that wasn't true? Like, are you afraid that this would happen? I think that's what happens with anybody with trust, is everybody is always afraid of the consequences.
Yes,
right?
True.
I mean, if you make a mistake, and you're taught from a very small time that if you make a mistake, you're going to suffer the consequences.
Yeah.
And for every action, there's a reaction. So, I mean, that's just part of life. So if you can teach somebody, mistakes happen, and it's whether or not you've learned from those mistakes. So if you can learn from that mistake and not make it again, then you've learned a life lesson. But if you make a mistake and you make the same mistake over and over, at that point, it's no longer a mistake and it's a choice.
Do you think this honesty, it's learned, is like a learned skill, or is just like how we are as human?
I think that's a really great question for another podcast.
Okay.
I think if anybody is super interested in learning more about these principles, I think they should definitely comment. And then maybe you and I can do like a podcast number 2, and we can revisit some of these comments or questions that any of your guests have.
Yeah, we could do that. Okay, so moving on to number 3. Less is more. I know it sounds a little bit contradictional, and like it's less is more. What does that mean? Because it sounds a little bit
tricky.
Yeah, tricky.
I think you kind of tricked your audience in the beginning, all the listeners. I think you asked them a really great question. I think from the time we're little as humans, we're conditioned to know that you want more. You want more medals. You want more success. You want more money. So I think we're all built upon this concept of you want to keep achieving more and more. But I think at this point in society, we need to stop and we need to understand that we need less. Okay, there are things in life that we definitely need less of to make more in our life. So I really think that we must choose to live less so we could live more. And in order to create a life that you love, you have to live in an alignment with what matters most to you.
So what you're saying is that like to realize or appreciate that having less makes us appreciate things more?
Yeah, and I think we have to understand, like, what could we do what do we need less of right now in our life and we need more of? I mean, let's look at the world globally. We definitely need less negativity and more positivity. We need less hatred in this world and more love, less fear and more hope, less complaining and more encouraging.
Yes, that is very true. We find that every day, like every single day, friends, family, kids, like that we teach, gymnasts, it doesn't matter. Everybody complains about this and that, and this is not fair, this is like this is like that. And you are right. Like,
And you do. And something else that I think that everybody could take in, whether it's in the classroom or whether it's in the gym or anywhere, is less doubt and more belief. I mean, okay, I'm going to give you a personal example. It's very easy for me to make all these excuses of why I shouldn't be going on my run, right? I can't do it. It's too hot. Like like there's lots of doubt, and that'll be like, oh, you know what? You're right. Like just stay in. But
yeah.
you know, if I have more belief, more, I could do this, more, you know, more
Like,
smiling, less frowning. I think we can definitely get to the
yeah.
goals that
And
we want to achieve.
I think this will energize you. Like, we talked about mindset and this and the positivity. I think it just brings energy.
Yep.
Like, that's what it brings to us. So
So
if we
let's,
complain less and we do more, we're gonna have more
that's,
energy in order to do what we want to achieve.
and something that is really important is I think we need less frowning and more smiling. Actually, I learned that when you frown, your body releases cortisol, which is really unhealthy for you. So if you smile more, you'll release better hormones, so it'll make you a little bit happier.
All
So I
right.
think,
So,
yeah, I think somebody needs to think to themselves, I really encourage to people to write in the comments, what is one thing less that you're going to do of and one thing more that you're going to do. And I would really like to go back and revisit this and see what people are posting in these comments.
yeah, we definitely want to see. I see down in the comments what you guys have to say about this. I want to tell you a story about this. Less is more. There were two guys. There was a true story. There were two guys, George and Timbo, very good friends from childhood. They were about 8 years old, something like that, and they were teammates in school. They were staying in the same bench, and they were very good friends. And there was winter break, and when the winter break was finished, they met again. And George was the rich guy, and then Timbo was the poor guy. Timbo asked George, so what did you get for Christmas? And George, the rich guy, he was all upset. Oh, I got these cars, matchboxes, and I got this and that, and I'm not very happy because I wanted trucks. And like, his parents had so much money that he did not appreciate any of the gifts. And he asks Timbo, what did you get? And he was like, tears in his eyes, and he was like so happy that he got a box of chocolate, and he was so happy to share it with his best friend. And I think what we can learn from this is that some people, just because they have less and they're poor, they got a box of chocolate, and for them was like everything, you know. And to get to share it with his best friend, it was like, you know, like George could do the same thing. Like, if he didn't like the matchboxes, the cars, he could give them away, you know, to Timbo, because I am sure he would really like that. But yeah.
No, that's a great lesson. Again, like your parents gave you as much as you could. So, and I think that goes back to, let's worry about less of the quantity of something and more of the quality. And I think that lesson definitely hits home to that story.
Yeah. So number 4, join the journey. What do you want to say about this? What do you have to say about this?
So I think we're always, as humans, right? We're always conditioned to worry about the product, like worry about the outcome. For example, when my kids are, we work all school year to worry about the Regents exam,
Yeah.
right? And what their score, like that one score of what their Regents exam is going to be. But meanwhile, they came to me in September and they couldn't even write, you know, they could write a paragraph. But now by the end of the year, they're writing full-length essays. That's huge.
Yes, it is.
And I think that we miss out in the joy of the process because we're so focused on the product. And I think as humans, we need to relax and we need to really find joy in the present.
So you kind of say that we need to take things one at a time, like take one thing at a time, to like if we have, let's say, a big job to do we have to like divide it in little jobs and kind of celebrate every single step that we have achieved? Like let's say in gymnastics in my area, if there's a big skill to be thrown, like to be learned, and we divide it in drills, let's say over like 4 weeks, and then each week we are working on a different part of the drill, are you saying like we should celebrate every time we achieve, like we are done with this drill, we are one step closer to what like where we want to get?
Absolutely. And I think every little bit of progress deserves a party. And I think we should celebrate that. I mean,
We should
because
already celebrate that we are doing the podcast.
definitely we should have a party afterwards. You know, it's definitely because, you know, your gymnast didn't walk in and they could do a double back. No, I mean, you've worked them up to that. And I think
Not
every
only
single
my gymnast,
time.
everybody.
Right. And I think every time that you do that, like you definitely need to have progress and, you know, have a party in the progress. I think people just need, in general, I think we need to slow down and we really need to just enjoy being in the present and enjoying the small accomplishments. And then, of course, when we get to the end, it's a bigger party.
Good. I like this. So could we party even if we don't kind of achieve that goal, like even if we are working on it, like maybe let's say we are thinking that we're going to finish it in 4 weeks, in a month time, and then it's like 1 month is finished and we haven't achieved it yet, but we are on the way to get there. What should
if you're still making progress, you should definitely still find the joy in making that progress and enjoy the journey, because it's always about the ride.
Good. Okay, and now number 5, reflection and resetting. Why did we leave this for the last?
I think it has to do with because, and this is an example. I think at the end of this podcast, we'll probably, you know, leave it alone for a little bit and learn to reflect upon what we learned, especially being, you know, the first podcast that we did together as a team. And I think it's a good thing to leave people with, because we're going to end with a really great quote and a little short poem. And I think that'll help the audience really listen and resonate it. So one of John Dewey says, "We do not learn from experience. We really only learn from reflecting on that experience." And I think that's important.
Wow. Can you say that again, please? Can you say that? Wow, that is such a good quote.
So we don't learn from experience. We really only learn when we reflect upon that experience. And I think we need to continually grow and evaluate us in every aspect that we do. It really causes us to reflect on everything. You know, I reflect on myself as an educator all the time on my lesson. Did that work out? Did that not work out? I'm sure you do it as a coach.
Yes.
You know, retail, did I set this up right? But also like personally, like even in relationships, right? You learn to really learn from the experience of relationships that, oh, I'm not going to do that. This relationship didn't work out well. I'm not going to do this in my next relationship.
Do you believe in love at first sight? Because you don't have, like, how will you reflect over what happened before, if that's like, or like the first love? How do you reflect over that? Like, what do you compare it with? With movies?
With movies, exactly.
Can you tell me a good movie for my subscribers to watch?
I think we should, a really good movie. I really like The Notebook. I think they grow, you know, the characters definitely grow in that book. They learn to, you know, reflect. But
nice.
What happens when it doesn't work out the way that you want? What happens if your love at first sight that you thought was love at first sight just doesn't work out, right? What happens if, you know, you've had your eye on the gold medal and, like you said before, you fall? what happens?
You hit the reset button and you try again?
You definitely do that. You have to give yourself permission to let it go. And I think as humans, we don't do that as often as we should. We don't give us permission to let it go.
So we hold on to things for too long sometimes, and it's not worth it.
It's not. You know, my daughter competes gymnastics, and I know one of the things that took her a very long time is now when, like, we have this thing, if she does something bad, she like licks her fingers and just like, as if she was going to turn the page, because you have to like just let it go. Like, there's no matter how much you sit there and say, if I could have done it this way, or if I could have done it that way, you're right, but it's done and it's in the past, and you have to give your permission to just let it go, turn the page. If plan A doesn't work out, my friends, it's going to be okay, because the alphabet has 25 more letters.
Good.
So you have to understand, I think what people need to really understand as they reflect and then they reset, that the comeback is always stronger than the setback. And that's what we have to tell ourselves, is that no matter what has happened, the comeback is always stronger than the setback.
When we reflect, we learn. Like, every time we reflect over what has happened, we learn how to live in the present. We look in the past, we see what we have done wrong, and we live in the present, because the future is not promised. You cannot change the past. So what are we going to do? We're just going to live right now.
Only live in the moment. That's the only thing that you're guaranteed, because tomorrow is never, ever guaranteed. You never know what would happen.
Yes. So
and I think...
Yeah, go ahead.
No, go ahead. I'm sorry.
So you obviously read a lot of books, and you had many other podcasts to discuss about things. I want to ask you, is there any more room for improvement and for learning if you already know so many things?
I don't think I know everything. I definitely think that as an educator, I want to continue learning. And I think I'm a little bit more fortunate enough that I get to work with the best individuals ever. I get to work with like little humans all the time, but my role is constantly changing. When I first started teaching, I've taught 9th grade, and then I've taught 8th grade, and either I'm really bad at it or I'm really good at it, because I've been in it for 13 years now. So, but every year I get new kids, and every year I continue to grow my pedagogy.
Pedagogy?
My teaching style.
Oh, okay. Good.
So every year I continue to grow more and more. I want to know more about my students.
So what inspired you to continue growing and learning and reflecting and stuff like that?
I just don't think I'm done. I'm not ready to I like to grow as an individual. I think that the mind is something that is such a resourceful tool that you can just keep adding to, and the more knowledge you have, technically the more power you have. So I want to continue I'm not done in my career. I want to continue working and inspiring, especially educators and children. And, but also like I work with my colleagues, and teaching could be rough. There's a lot of things that they did not teach you in college. Definitely. And I think not only in teaching or coaching or any other aspect, I think we also as human beings really need to give yourselves permission that you are enough, right? That whatever you did today has to be enough, because you can't change it, right? And you need to be able to let go of the judgment you have about what you should have or what you could have been doing, or you need to quiet that voice, right? And you need to trust only in this moment that who you are, where you are, and what you're doing is truly enough. Like, you're going to get to where you need to be in your own time. And until then, you need to breathe. and breathe and be patient with yourself. And to know that you are doing the best that you can possibly do, and you're doing the best that you can ask of yourself. So it is enough, and you are enough. And I think with that being said, I really hope that the audience has took a deep breath in, breathe out, and understand that they are enough. Right? You breathe in joy, and you let go of judgment.
So if you would have to conclude this podcast in one phrase, let's say, what would be the highlight? Like, what would you kind of put in a couple of words everything we have discussed about today?
I really hope that anybody who's listened to this podcast took maybe just one piece of advice that we gave them, or sat and thought about one thing, and maybe just if they left knowing that they are enough. Like for me, that means everything, that you are enough.
Very good. Thank you very much for joining me in my podcast today. Thank you very much for watching our podcast. Please subscribe to my channel, comment below, and see you next
You'll
time.
never know who may pop up as guest speakers if they truly like your podcast. So, yeah. And that's another way, guys. If you get a chance, please reflect on this podcast. Leave some comments, questions, concerns, and this way, Goran will be able to tell what your audience is, what his audience is looking for, and what they need. So those comments are super important.
Thank you very much for joining me today. What time is now in America? It's like midday or something like that. Here is like midnight. There's midnight. Yeah, here's midnight. So we're both in the middle of something.
Lots of stuff. So, but it was a joy, and thank you. And I hope everybody has a fantastic day.
Yes. Thank you very much for joining me today. Take care of yourself and see you next time.
Well, thanks everybody.
Bye.
Bye.